this may be something that the women can relate to a little bit more, but hopefully the journey and the story is something for everyone. So let's officially begin. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what we are going to discuss today.
Yeah. So my name is Noelle. I was a missionary wife for 10 years and a pastor's wife for 10 years, and overlapped that with 9 years in state government. In 21, I had life-saving surgery as my aorta decided to separate. And many times that is a fatal thing for people, but the Lord saved me. And we realized that there's a reason I'm still here on this earth. And in that recovery, trying to figure out who I am, realize that women mostly focus on being a mom and being a wife and doing the roles and things that society says we should do. And we don't take the time to remember that we are humans and we are unique and passionate, and we have our own passions and purpose. And we should be focusing on that as our core to help us make decisions on who we are and what we're supposed to do, and life decisions. And so that's where I've focused my journey now, is to help women find their passion and make sure they're living it.
So let's start from the genesis of this. So when you began to realize that, and maybe many women experience this, you're more than the title of a wife, title of a mother. You are still a person before all of these situations arise in your life, right? So
Correct.
how did you come to the conclusion that you are more than these titles? You are a person outside of it.
For me, it took over 48 years. I spent many years in many situations just doing what needed done. I was Robert's wife for many years. I was the kid's mom for 18 plus years. And I never realized or evaluated, why don't they just call me Noelle? Who is Noelle? I spent many years just doing what I was told and what needed to be done. Many of my jobs were because somebody needed to do it. I can do that. So yeah, let's jump in. But is that the best use of my time and skills? Maybe, maybe not. And after my surgery, I spent about 6 months recovering and spent some time writing and reading and just thinking through who I am and my story, and realizing that I do have a story that's worth telling, because nobody else has lived the same 50 years I've lived. May have had some of the similar experiences, but not the exact same 50 years. And that's me. That's my uniqueness. And everybody has a unique story. Everybody has a story that's worth telling. And when I realized that my story was a story and it was more than just, yeah, that's just me, it's changed my life. And I love sharing it and I love talking to people. And when you see people turn those light bulbs on and see that, oh, that means something. Yeah, I am a person. I could do that, or whatever it is for them. It's so heartwarming.
Do you feel sometimes that we get lost in the titles and forget how we were before they were in some cases placed on us, or that we've taken ownership of those titles, like when you become a wife or a husband or a mother or a father?
Very, very much so. We take on those titles, we take on those roles, and it incrementally changes us and our focus, and we over time forget what we wanted to do. So I like to ask people, what did you want to do when you grew up? What was your dream job? Or what were you doing when you were 12? What was it that you enjoyed? And we often forget what we were doing when in the preteens, before we became a teenager. For me, I wanted to be a stewardess is what I thought, but that turns into what I did do was be a missionary, and I got to travel as a pastor's wife and as a missionary. We traveled the world, and it was different. It's not traveling into, the tourist parts of town. We got to go in some back doors and meet, the people that have lived there for years and see how life really is in those countries. And the other part of me wanted to write. I actually got a typewriter as a kid. I had forgotten that for many, many, many years. And now that I'm processing this, I think back as a child, I had a typewriter and was sitting on the living room couch typing. What little kid, back in the 80s wanted to type? It was just, to me, it just seems weird. Just an oddity that, that was me. And now that I love, realize I love writing, it makes sense. That's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to put my fingers to the keyboard.
And now we're in an age where typing is like a lost skill.
It
right? It's
is.
like it's similar to, let's say, how many people born in the last 20 years can read an analog clock? They'll look at it and be like, oh my God, what do those signs mean? It's all digital now, right? Who
Right.
remembers dial-up internet?
Yeah, the phones with the cords on them,
Yeah, there you go. Or the rotary phones,
or cassette tapes.
cassette tapes, right? For those who are trying to say they're aging themselves, we're old, but we're proud of our age, right?
Of course. Yep.
So when you had the life alter changing surgery, was that the point in your life where you were more reflective and you're thinking, hmm, what did I like as a kid? What did I like as a teenager? What was my dream job? Because these are conversations I'm pretty sure everyone has had at one point, but for some reason they stop having as they get older.
They do. And when I had, so I spent 13 days in the hospital and 6 months recovering. And I think it was when I got back to work and things just weren't the same. I started going through some worksheets and books and stuff to just think about, who am I? Where do I want to go from here? Is because it just didn't feel right. I wasn't lining up. The alignment, the energy levels weren't right, and something was just off. It has taken me, at least a year, if not more, 18 months to evaluate and think through all of these things, and realize that that job situation had changed enough in the last couple of years that it wasn't fitting. It wasn't giving me the enjoyment and fulfillment that something of that much time in your life should give you. And I think we do have a job. We have roles in a workplace. We have to make money to survive and do anything in this world, and money is very important. But what we do in that job has to line up with who we are, or our energy isn't fulfilling. We don't get that enjoyment. We don't understand what's off, but something is just off in our core.
What about the women out there who are saying, Noelle, I just, I don't know how to find that version of me? How do you help them rediscover who they are or who they were?
Yeah, it's a process, and it does take some time, but we want to look at, what are your values? What matters most? What's important to you, and who you are? Don't worry about your husband, your kids, all of that, you personally. And it's hard to take that thought process and actually turn off all those things that we need to do, all the things that our husband and our kids want us to do, and who we've become in the family environment, to think about us. I think that's one of the hardest things for me, is what do I want separate from everything else? That it's a really hard question to think about. But we need to look at, who am I? What is my identity personally? What am I passionate about? What do I like to do for me, not for the kids, not for hubby? What do I like to do? And what skills have I been given? What comes naturally for me? What do I enjoy doing? And what I've realized over some trial and error this last year of doing different things and trying different ways to think through things, I love speaking and writing. That is my jam. And it is trial and error. You got to try things. I did not like networking events when a couple of years ago, but after having to do it and getting a couple different environments, it's not the best. It's not I don't love meeting people, but it's gotten a lot easier. And I think it's the practice. When they talk about podcasts, is you want to do like 100 of them, get started, get your feet wet, get going. And I think a lot of that has to do with just fine tuning your message, thinking not necessarily just fine tuning the words, but actually, what do you want? Thinking through, who am I and what do I have to offer this world? And so that, I think, in that process also is where I've grown, because I've had to just verbalize it over and over and over the last few months as I've meet people, which has helped a great deal.
I know for me growing up, I thought I was going to be a professional athlete. And I love basketball, I love football, I love soccer, I even loved badminton, right? But my passion was actually, and even though I couldn't play it well, I really enjoyed watching hockey. And as I got older, I began to have situations where I was doing public speaking. And even though I didn't do it often enough, when I did do it, I loved it. And I knew that my life was going to include this somehow, some way. But then something happened. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what happened. I needed money to pay bills. Life hit me like a brick wall. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people because a lot of our passions sometimes in the early stages isn't enough to sustain a lifestyle that you're looking to have. And that lifestyle sometimes is developed by comparison to other people. I see Noelle, she's married, and I'm thinking, why can't I be married? Or if the next person has children, why can't I have children? They have a nice car, why can't I have this? And then we start to put our passions, we start to drift from our passion. And as you put it, we get closer to a job. And many of us have jobs that we know deep in our heart aren't going anywhere. When someone comes up to you, Noah, and they say, I don't know what to do. I'm in this job. It sustains this lifestyle. It's not going anywhere. I want to have your courage, but I don't know if I have it in me. Is there a few steps that I can do to eventually get to the point where it's like I've rediscovered me and now I'm just growing into what I should have been from my dreams?
Yeah, so part of it's looking at who you are and what do you like to do so you can get a job or work on a side gig or something that fulfills your passion and your desires. But then you need to be intentional about who you hang around with. Jim Rohn says to be, you are the five that you are hanging around with. And you want to be around people that are going to encourage you, lift you up, and help you be that person that you're going to be dreaming of. It's kind of like a mirror is the way I envision it, is you got these five people that are around you, at least, and they have a mirror reflecting back to you what you are. They're giving you true feedback. You're trusting them because they have nothing in it for them. They are there to help you grow, and they're giving you positive and negative feedback. For me, one of the hardest things to accept is when somebody I know and that I admire tells me I'm good on stage or tells me that the outfit looks good, whatever it could be. That's hard for me to take. It's like, no, you're just saying that. But if you evaluate, and these are the five people that you're going to trust to give you the feedback, okay, she's in it for herself. She's not trying to advance herself because that doesn't do anything for her. And you acknowledge that there's truth in that statement, whatever that statement is. And that can help bring you and your confidence level up because you can borrow the belief that they have in you to get you up to that next level.
Did you have to go through a process of changing the five people that you have around you when you were a different person back then versus today?
I would say that I didn't do it intentionally, which is something I would encourage people to, if you're acknowledging this, you can be intentional of who you're hanging around with. But when I left my job last year, those people I was with that were just keeping the status quo stayed at the job. And I started being around people who are networking and growing their business. And that's who I want to be. I want to be growing and I want to be expanding who I am as a person to help everybody else. So it was kind of an unintentional, but yes, it changed the whole group of people that I was with because I quit the job and that would change my environment.
How was the emotions for you when you're experiencing these changes? Because these are big, big changes for the average person to go through.
It is, and we all have different personalities and we all feel emotions differently in different levels. I'm not a hugely emotional person, but leaving my job was a hard decision because it was our family's income. and something I had done for 9 years. And I loved my team. The people I worked with under me were just absolutely fabulous. They're amazing people. And I actually miss them and that miss that camaraderie and the conversations. And you have these thoughts, well, I could go back and do that. Like, no, 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 that's not who I am. I can't go back. But, and then the emotion of just growing and changing, it's so wonderful when you're doing something that you love to do. It is beyond words. When I get off a podcast like this, I am just like floating around the room on cloud nine. And I can't explain it to anybody, but it is amazing feelings when you're doing what you love to do, for money or not. It is just wonderful and unexplainable.
When you're looking back at that person, Noelle from last year or a few years ago, are you surprised? Well, I shouldn't say surprised. How happy are you about the changes you have made to feel the type of emotions that you're feeling right now?
Part of me wonders why I didn't do it sooner. Right. And I mean, I'll give you an example. When I left my job, I had gone back to do some lunches and stuff with friends and those first couple months, and everybody would tell me how much better I looked. Things must be going great because you just look amazing. And I actually went back to my camera to look at work pictures, or pictures I'd taken even a year or two ago and compared to this last fall, and I could not see the difference. It is not a physical difference. It was an energy level. That was a huge awakening for me because I am very much not a woo-woo kind of person that deals, I don't get the energy stuff. I'm very much a head person. But the idea that I showed up differently because of how I felt about life, it awakened me and reminded me, and I realized a few things. When I had worked my way through different jobs to a level of authority and influence, that's when I was happiest. When I could be me and express who I was and help others at the top of my game, however you want to word it, that's when I was happiest. That's when it worked. That's when everything was more in alignment with who I am. And I mean, that energy level it's a real deal, people.
That's what's absolutely missing, is that you have the comparison of the physical. You look at the two pictures and you're like, I'm still the same kind looking person, right?
Of course.
But what you can't see in the photos, what you can't put a dollar amount on, is the energy, it's how other people view you. Like, I'm pretty sure when you stepped into that room, everyone was like, oh, is that Noelle? You're just radiant, right? You're just bubbly. Like, it's a different persona. Still the same person, still probably dressing the same way, still speaking the same way, but the aura around you is different. And I think that's what a lot of people can't measure, is that, if we put it to relationships, when someone is going through a bad relationship, we know it. We're like, girl, what's wrong with you? Or we're like, bro, what's going on? Like, you like you haven't eaten, you're okay? But when we take pictures, when they come out, they still relatively look the same. For you, when you're dealing with the woman that you speak to, when you're having these engagements, do you sense the aura that is coming from them? And then you can kind of pinpoint saying that this person needs a little bit of work to get them to a point where they're like, hey, you're going to start lighting up the room and everyone's going to be around you because your personality is going to be so magnetic.
It is so true. And you can just tell, and it's more difficult in the virtual setting because the computer just can't send the same signals as when you're in person. And video is still better than pictures. So even if you were to take a video of me compared to earlier, I'm not sure you would be able to tell that it's the energy that you can feel physically when you're near somebody. An example is we were at a training, and a lady made some physical changes to herself from one day to the next that she was recommended. And she came in radiant just because she grew from that confidence, and everybody came around to talk to her. The day before, she was just huddled in a corner talking, and maybe not huddled, but very, very much closed in, and you could just feel the negative energy. But when you come out of that shell and you can be confident in who you are, it's not always a very split second decision. It's not a change in personality. It's not a change in hair that can change that all the time. It does take work to get there. But when you can be who you are meant to be, the energy that just flows from you and the confidence that comes out is just overwhelming.
When you see that, what you just described in other women, how does that make you feel?
It's so encouraging. When they can take what they hear from a leader or coach, a friend, a mentor, and take it in and envelop it and just acknowledge it and just change it in their core and who they are, it just changes the whole room. Everybody notices, for good or bad. Some people may not be ready for that exposure, but it's just encouraging because we all can be there. We all have the ability to make that choice in ourselves to be the best us. Nobody else can do it. I think that's part of it, is we want society to just choose for us. I mean, I will say, when I left the church and I tried when I got the job at the state, I had thrown my resume out shotgun style, but I guess basically hoping the universe would pick the best job for me. That's not always how it should work. we have some stake in this. It's our job to be the best us. Nobody else will do it for us.
For those who are watching along on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and my social media, please subscribe and follow along for more wonderful interviews like the one we have